Hi developers out there, welcome back, and I hope you are having a great day. In this clip, we are going to see how we can work on our backend to verify the payment made by the customers or the users of our application. On Paystack, this is how it works. When a customer initializes a payment, then the payment is expected to be verified so as to know whether the payment is successful or not. We had on previous videos work on payment initialization, but in this video, we want to work on the backend so as to verify whether the payment is actually successful or not. So let's start. The first thing I will need to do is to change this endpoint verify to verify underscore API. Then I will copy this. Then as you can see, I've already logged into the cPanel. So what I need to do now is to create another file, and then I will call the file verify underscore API. The endpoint I've copied here. So and the extension PHP extension. Then click on create new file button. Alright, so the file has successfully been created. So let's go and open the file as you can see here. So I just right click and then click on this edit, and I've opened the file now. So the next thing I need to do now is to open another tab. Then go to Paystack website. So I click on Paystack. Then go to documentation. Then API. Then transactions. Then verify. Verify transactions. So I will come here. Click on this caret. Then you can actually work on either Node, Core, or PHP. But since I'm using PHP, I will choose this. Then copy everything I have here, that they have here rather. Then I copy it. Then go back to my file. Then paste everything here. So at least we've been able to get what the code want to work with. So the next thing we do now is to actually get our secret key. So let me get that first. So I will need to log in before I can get my secret key. So let me log in first. So I will go to preferences, then API keys and webhooks, then go to the test mode section, then my test key. So I want to copy what I have here. So let me generate a new secret key. Then I can click on generate new secret key. So everything is properly set now. So I can now copy the secret key now. So I copy it. Then I go back to my file here. Then I can now paste it here. So that aspect is done now. Then we need to declare a variable here. So I will call the variable dollar reference equal dollar underscore post. We go back to our front end. So here, so as you can see, we have a reference. This what we have here is what we want to grab. So I copy this and I paste it here so that we can make use of the value of what we have here. And then in the last video tutorial, I think I didn't follow the functional programming rule. So here now I'm supposed to have a parameter here. So let me call the parameter reference also. So our function now has a parameter called reference. And when we call the function down here, then we can supply the argument also called reference. And of course, the reference we have here, this variable we have here is what we are supplying as argument to our function verify payment. All right, having done that, then we can now go back to our backend. Then the variable we have here, the reference, then and the reference we have here that comes from a Paystack documentation, then we can make it dynamic. So we have a dot reference here. So let's try to run the code to see the result first. Now let's go back to our front end, then click on the run button here. All right, let me copy the URL, then let me open another tab here. All right, let me just fill some data here, and let me have a 5,000 and click on the button. Okay, it's not working now because we change on this particular page. Now we made some changes, the secret key, so I need to go back and open the file there so that I can actually change the secret key. Don't forget we change the secret key on Paystack website, so let's update our secret key first before we now come back here. As you can see, I'm in the file now, so let me copy the current secret key we have here. All right, and go back to our Paystack underscore API for initialization. Then I paste it or update my secret key here. Then save this. So now let me go back to our interface. So then let me reload it. Then enter my details. Then let me just put 1000 here. Then click. You can see it's working now because of that secret key that I updated on Paystack website. Then I fill in my card details here. Then click on pay button. All right. So we are not seeing anything now. So let's try to work on the remaining aspect now. So let me close this, then come back to our API. And here in the S aspect where we have echo response, we can turn it to JSON format. We can now see JSON underscore encode. So let's try to save and see once again. So let me reload the browser. Okay, nothing is showing now. So let's try to inspect, then go to browser console. Okay, let me make this a little bit bigger and see. All right, and try to make it bigger a little bit again. All right, it's saying uncut reference error. Uncut reference error, verify payment is not defined. All right, verify payment is not defined. So verify payment. All right, verify payment. Yeah, all right. Okay, it seems our verify payment, when we call it here, is not inside our conditional statement here. So let's try to put it here and see. So let's reload our browser again. Okay, it seems the error is gone now. Okay, we're not having anything also. So let's go back to our backend, the API. So here now, what we need to do next, we have a ob underscore clean. Terminate it. Then we have a exit here or die. Exit or die. Let's save it once again. Go back to our browser. Let's try and reload the browser again. All right. So everything is working now. So we have our data back now. You can see here now status true message verification successful. So that means the payment was actually successful. So let me close this now. All right, so we have everything. So we've gotten the data, the success message from Paystack now that the payment we've made, the payment the customer had actually made was successful. So now we can now start using whatever we need from this message, the JSON returned by Paystack again. So let's go to our browser console. So let me go to inspect and then browser console. So as you can see, what we have here, you can also see it in our browser console. So if I should click on this arrow, and then you can see that we have some nested object here. So if I want to get any data from any of these nested objects, so this is how I can easily go about it. So the first thing here, you can see we have data here. This data also has some nested object. The data object has some nested object also. So the first one here, we have a amount which has a 10,000 as value. Then we have this authorization object that has some nested objects also. So you can see that we have here now authorization code, then channel. No, channel is not part of it. Let me expand it a little bit. We can see here now under this authorization, we have a authorization code, account underscore name, bank. So to get, for instance, if you want to get the bank we use, for instance, so this is how we can easily go about it. The first thing here inside our set post, we can say data variable we have here, then also followed by dot. Then if you should go back to our browser, you can see we have data here, which is the first object we have there. We can access it by having our data here, then followed by authorization. Here, let me copy the authorization for instance, then I paste it here. Then if I now want to get anything under this authorization, I will also say dot. Then what do we want to get there? Let's say, for instance, we want to get the authorization code, for instance. Then we can try the others also. There's the authorization code. Let's have it here. You can see we have data, which is this the data, and of course you can see that the color is a little bit darker than the rest. So this is the variable we have here. Data variable is what comes first here, then followed by what we have from Paystack. So if we should go back, for instance, you can see here we are having um, the value of this authorization underscore code. Let me just try to do something so that we can see. Let me come here and change this to div. And here let's have a class name, because this is an empty string. There's a w3 enter, for instance. See it. All right, then let's just have a style. Let's say adding, let's say 10 pixels. Let's increase it a little bit. Let's say 200, for instance. All right, so that we can see everything as we interact with our console here. So the next thing we need to do now, so let's try to get the value of this bank, for instance. Let's go back to our replit, and then here we have a authorization dot authorization underscore code. Then we change this authorization underscore code to bank. Then we should be able to have a text bank. You can see here now. Then if you want to get, for instance, let's say signature, for instance, because this signature is nested inside the authorization, then we still go back, and instead of bank we have a signature there, and of course we should have this value. As you can see, is exactly what we are having here now. So let's say we want to get this channel now. For instance, we want to get this channel used, which is card. So we need to remove this authorization here and just put a channel here, because this channel is not nested in authorization. So this channel and the authorization, they are on the same level. So if you should go back now, you can see we have card here. Good. All right. So let's say we want to get some data from the customer object now. Then what we need to do, let's go back to our replit, and then where we have channel, let's put a customer there, for instance. Then we have dot. What do we want to get? what do you want to get from the customer? Excuse me. We let's say we want to have a, let me expand it first. Let's say we want to get a customer code, for instance. Let's grab that and go back. Let's paste it here. Let's go back to our browser. You can see we have the customer code. Then let's say I want to get my name and my email, for instance. Okay, let's have this. Let me say customer email, then plus because we want to concatenate, then string to give it small gap. Then we can now have s underscore name. So let's go back. Okay, let me grab this first. Let me go back and paste here. Okay, should be this also. I will have to copy everything from here and also paste it here. Okay, let's go back. As you can see, we have the email we have here and the name also, just what we have here. So you can decide to take whatever value by just following the structure of the object there. And then others you can see here. So you can expand them, then get whatever value you want to get from it. The nested object there, the history, you can see the log also has a history. Let's say you want to get message, this message then they attempted to pay with card. So this is how we go about it. For instance, we can see from data, then log, then we have a history, then zero, this array, then we have a message. So let's try to get it. So the first thing, we have to get a log. Let me remove all this first. We have a log dot history, then followed by dot message 3. We have a 0, then because it's an array, as you can see here now, the history in the array is being indicated there. Then dot message. You can see that we have attempted to pay with card. You can see now. So if you want to get the 7 now, that time the time 7. So all we need to do is copy what we have here from here. Okay, let me just, instead of this message, let me just put time here and see, have 7 here. So let me just look for what we need to return to our customers. So let's say we need this message. So we can simply say data.data.message. Oh, sorry, message is not inside the data object, so I need to remove this. It's direct. So okay, you can see we have a verification successful now. This is the message. It's not nested inside data object. So the next thing we need to do now, we want to say verification successful with my name. So I go to customer object here now. So you can see we have a customer, then first name. So let me grab this first name here. Here we say data dot message. Then we have a concatenation. Of course, you can use a string interpolation here, but you can decide to use whatever you like. So let me just use this concatenation, string concatenation here. So I will now say dot data dot customer dot then first name. So let me remove this column here. If I should go back to our browser, for instance, you can see verification successful, Felix. And let's say we have another concatenation. Let's say we have this. Then you have the amount being paid. Then we say data. Let's see, and let's say here now. Let's say verification successful, Felix, for payment of n data dot amount. Don't forget amount is not nested inside any object. It's directly inside the data object here. So you can see amount. Of course, we are seeing undefined here. Sorry, I forgot to put the variable here, the data variable. Let's say dot, then have a data dot amount. Of course, this variable data can be anything. So you can decide to put let's say res. So you have to change this to res also. Then this also to res, which stands for response. I think we should be able to have the same thing. So you can see verification successful failure for payment of 100,000 naira. So this is how the customer can verify whether the payment was actually successful or not. So any data you want to reveal to the user here, of course you can actually get them. So the next thing we want to do now, we want to try to insert some data what we have from Paystack. Probably we want to store them on our own database, for instance. So how do we go about that? Let's go back to our API. So what we have here, then let me go to the cPanel once again. Then I go to PHP my admin. So I want to access the database. All right, we can view our database now. Let me click on these databases. Let me click on this granny underscore front. All right, you can see now I've already created a table in our database. The name of the table is payment underscore verification. If I should click on it, all right, we have some fields here. We have ID, verification underscore ID. We need the verification ID, then the reference ID, the amount, then created underscore at, customer ID, name, email, and customer code. So all these things we are going to, all these fields, we are going to need them. So I've actually created the table inside our database. So now let's try to insert some data has been generated by Paystack for us so that we can insert it and keep it in case we want to make use of them. So let's do that now. So back to our verify underscore API, the API file. So we need to test. So to test, here we can have a $res, go to the code, then we have the response here. Then we can now say if $res is pointer, then we have message verification. We can now say $res, then message equals is what we have here. What's this? And status. Let's have this res status equals to one, that is true. Then we can now, we should have it here in our else aspect here. Then can now insert our data. So the first data we need to insert here according to our table here, verification underscore ID. So we need the verification ID. And if we should go back to our browser and try to check very well. So where is the verification ID? So the verification ID is our reference number that we have here. So let's have the reference number. So we can now say in our API, can say $ref equal to $res, then verification. Because if you look at it very well, our reference here is not nested under any object. It's directly under this data. Then we have to have data also. So we have a data, then the pointer. We can now terminate it. Then let's write our SQL first. So we say $SQL equal an empty string. So inside our empty string, we have a insert into name of our table. Then we have a hash underscore, then the name of our table. Also, I'm not using the same framework, the one I'm using now. So you can ignore this hash in your own code. So then and now the name of our feed. The first one here is verification. So go back to the file, then I paste it here, then have a values. Then inside the values have an empty string. Then we can now put this our ref here. All right, so after successful, then we can now say $sum db query, which is a function or method in our class. So now having this, then the variable we have here, so it comes as an argument parameter to our method here. So we successfully call that method here. So if we should save this and let's go back to our browser and try to reload this, All right, we are having an error here. Fill with status 500. Okay, seems we are having an error in our API. So we have a SQL this. All right, I think here instead of having the code, it should be JSON. Sorry, JSON underscore code. So let's go back again and try to run the browser. Data is not defined. Okay, let's go back to our replit and see. Okay, don't forget we change our variable name to res from data. All right, so let's try to load it again. Reference error, data is not defined. Where do we have data again? I think here, have res here. All right, I can see it's working now. So if we should go to our database and try to refresh, okay, nothing is inserted. So let's go back again. Have underscore underscore email verification, and this is our ref. Let's remove this first and let's try to save once again. Then run the browser. Let's go back to our table. All right, you can see we have a 0 instead of our verification ID. Sorry, I think I made an error here. Instead of this reference, I think we are having reference feed here. As you can see, reference feed. So let's go back to our browser. I think inside our transaction, I think it should be customer ID. So let's edit our table here. Let me go to structure. So instead of having verification underscore ID, let's have a customer underscore ID there. Sorry, the mistake is actually from my part. Instead of having ID here, it should be not reference because reference is a string and we are expecting an integer value. That's why we're having 0 there. So to resolve that problem, so let's go back to our browser. Then let's go through the data being returned by Paystack. And as you can see from here, we should have an ID. Okay, you can see ID here now. So this is the ID we are looking for. So this is the verification ID. So I'll copy the ID and go back to our API, the backend. Then we can now declare another variable called dollar verification, which is var underscore ID equal to dollar res pointer. Then have a data. Then we have a pointer to the ID. And we terminate it. And where we have a ref here, we can now replace it with verification underscore ID. So if we should now save it and go back to our browser, if we reload it and go back to our database, let's try to refresh it. You can see good. You can see that we are having the ID value being inserted here. And as you can see, the data is being inserted twice. We'll come back to that later. And the next thing we need to work on now is the reference. So let's go back to our file. Then we have a reference. Then after that, we have a, so if I should save this and try to reload the browser once again, then go back to our database and refresh. All right, you can see we have our reference now inserted into our database. What about the amount? Then we can have our amount here, amount. Then we have dollar amount and declare a variable called amount. Let's change this to amount. And then here we have a amount. This is the key. So let's save this and go back to our browser. Let's try to reload it. Then go back to our database, refresh. All right, you can see been able to get the amount. So created at. So let's work on that. So we have our created underscore at. Then declare a variable called created at. Then let's view where the created at is. Okay, created at. is directly under the object. So we copy it, then back here where we have amount, replace it with created at, then we save it, then we can reload the browser. Then if we should reload the database, I mean the table, oh, nothing is being shown here. All right, let's try to go back to our API and see what is really going on. Oh, we didn't include our created at, so let's have the variable created at here and paste it here. So we save, then we should refresh. Okay, let's reload our browser, then refresh. All right, you can see the data is successfully inserted. So the next thing we want to work on now is customer ID. So let's try to get that. So we say customer ID, customer underscore ID, so that we don't make mistake. So let's have after created at, then let's have customer underscore ID. Then we create another variable called customer ID. Then don't forget our customer ID should be inside the customer object. So you can see customer ID here. So we have a ID there. So we have a customer first, customer, the pointer, then ID. Then here, let's now have that in our value. Then I will copy the variable. Then let's save everything. Then reload the browser here. Go back to our database, refresh, and you can see we have our customer ID. What about the name, email, then customer code? Let's try to work on name and email. So you can do the rest by yourself, whatever data you need. So of course the customer name is under customer object. So we can have a instead of ID we have name there. Then we have let's have name, then email. Then we have here name, then copy this again, paste, then rename this to email. Then here we have a email, and here copy the email, paste it here. Then what we have here, then rename it to name. So that's it. Then go back to our browser, try to refresh the browser, then go back to our database, try to reload our database. So as you can see, we have think there is an error there. So let's try to go back and see what is happening there. So let's go back to our front end, then the data being returned, customer. All right, we have an email, then the name should be this. So let me grab this. Let me just grab the first name underscore name. Back to our API, we have a where we have name. We change this to first underscore name. We can now concatenate it. We have string. And copy everything here once again. Paste it. Then we can now have last name. All right. So if we should now reload, or first let's save first. Let me save it first. Then reload the browser. Then go back to my database, refresh the database. All right. So you can see we have a Felix Akingbulu here. So if I should just try to, let me say I want to edit this so that you can see if the data is inserted correctly. All right. Or everything is not inserted correctly here. So because why in our name feed here, we said the variable character should be 11. So let's try to correct that. Let's have a go back to our structure. All right, in our name and the email, then I want to change it. All right, instead of this I can change it to 250, and this also 250, and I save it. All right, let me browse it. All right, so now if I should refresh the browser again and go back to our database and try to view it, you can see now everything is inserted correctly. So that is how we can verify payments on Paystack. So thank you so much for watching. I didn't expect the video to be as long as this, so sorry for that. So please, if you find this video useful, please don't forget to like and Also, if you are new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel.